Working Cows Podcast, episode 267. This episode is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. For a look at their full range of top quality products, visit mysticlubes.com.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. This is Clay Connery, host of the Working Cows Podcast, powered by the Global Ag Network. And this episode is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants.
Since 1922, Mystic Lubricants has been providing superior performance and protection for farmers who demand the most out of their equipment. Today, Mystic continues to develop products in real-world conditions that are specially formulated to meet the unique demands of your specialized machines. They provide advanced protection for engine longevity and are the choice of people who make a living working the land. Learn more about Mystic products at mysticlubes.com. That's MYSTIK lubes.com.
Well, the cattle market is making some changes here and there, up and down, and in different places, and always changing everywhere. And so whenever we experience these changes, or any time when we're just looking to sharpen that management axe, I always want to get Wally Olson's ear and see what he's got to say. And he's got a webinar coming up at Ranching.FYI. If you go and sign up there for a subscription to Ranching.FYI, the yearly fee, you can get in on this webinar that will take place December 13th. I am currently on an elk hunt as this is coming out, and so won't be able to make a show notes page. I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, letting people know that they should be subscribing through their podcast catcher, or they can go to the globalagnetwork.com and find it. But if you want to go to ranching.fyi and find that webinar, you can, or the subscription service that they have there, you can sign up for that and then get in on this webinar that's coming up December 13th. But for now, looking forward to talking to Wally today about how we manage the changing markets and what we can do in our management to make sure that we are capturing value and remaining profitable. So Wally, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows Podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you for letting me be on. And I always enjoy visiting with you and stuff.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your investment over the years, and you have jumped off on this on this Ranching.FYI journey, and you've got a webinar coming up in the near future when this episode releases. What is kind of going to be the content of that webinar that you've got scheduled?
Well, one of the things that I am most concerned about is being prepared. This is what I learned from Bud Williams: is always be prepared, and you need to be prepared for the. We are getting ready to, when it rains. They talk about inflation now. Well, when it rains, there's going to be huge inflation in the cow business. I mean, all of the price. When I'm talking about inflation, I'm talking about everything going up, and it's going to go up. And on the other side of that, as soon as we get a few more cows gathered back up in a couple of years, there's going to be huge deflation. And that's different than appreciation and depreciation that I talk about. And so if you can capture the inflation with the appreciation, I mean, the good times roll and stuff. So that is one of the reasons I want to visit with you. And also that's what I'm doing the webinar on, is how to prepare for the advantages coming up.
Yeah, we've seen some pretty remarkable turnaround in the markets over the last year or so, and I think a lot of that has to do with the limited number of cows that are still out there. A lot of them got sold in the drought that has impacted the West and the Great Plains. And I was talking to you the other day, and you said that the drought has come to eastern Oklahoma. So I don't know if that's quite Midwest or not, but it's come to your neighborhood as well. And you guys are dealing with it, and we're seeing cow liquidation there too. So that is kind of what has, in your mind, what's facilitated this most recent upturn. But when it rains, you think it'll go higher, is what you're saying.
I'm saying that I have some friends in Australia, and Dallas Mount was over there a few years ago, and he was talking about depreciation, and they informed him that that it didn't matter over there. Well, they'd been in a drought for so long that cows just sold for slaughter price. Well, now if you were to go over there and talk to them, because there's they're selling cows for 5,000, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, and so here in a couple of years, they are really going to be talking about this. And what I want to do is hopefully get people so they're very aware of what they can do and stuff.
Yeah, what would be some of those things? How would you mentioned inflation and deflation of the market? So how would you be prepared to deal with those things?
Well, one thing you always need to be dealing with today. Look at the relationships of today. And if you were, and I will give you an example, I use the cowbell curve basic a lot, which is all it is comparing relationships of the market. And it compares the relationships of the heifer calf to the bred cow to the cull cow. And so you always need to be watching that. And another relationship is what it costs you to do things. And I will give you an example that this last month in Manhattan, Kansas, they sold some first calf heifer pairs for $2,650. Well, if you compare that to what you could buy a heifer to replace her with, there was $1,600 worth of appreciation there. And the relationship you need to find out is, can you, for $1,650, make that heifer calf into a first calf heifer pair? And for God's sakes, I hope you can, and then on the converse side of that, there was $1,690 worth of depreciation going on there. If you kept that first calf heifer and sold her as a cull cow, that is a huge amount of wealth building and wealth giving away, and that is one of the reasons why the cow calf business is basically break even, because if the heifer calf costs $1,050, the cull cow is $960, that's basically just break even and stuff. And so that's what I'm talking about. You need to understand the relationships of the business you're in and stuff.
Yeah. So just figuring out what is overvalued today and what is undervalued. And I think that you've said probably more often than not, the most undervalued critter on the market is a heifer calf. Is that right?
Most of the time. Now, if you are in Oklahoma right now, the bred cow is almost the most undervalued animal, just because nobody wants them, and also there's not very many moving. But if you could buy some young bred cows very reasonably right now in Oklahoma, and you just need to be aware of that.
What can we capture her for, and then what will it cost us to hold on to her until she's into another class and move her? Is that kind of summarize how you're thinking about it? That's
what you need to do, is just understand the relationships of what it's going to cost you to do it, and see if it is a good trade and stuff. And one thing I need to tell you about why I talk about relationships so much is I'm going to tell a story, since I'm a storyteller. I grew up in Oldsburg, Kansas, which is a Swedish community. and they had the first Saturday in December. They have had a Swedish supper there for as long as I can remember, and it'd been about 30 years since I'd been back, and I went back to the Swedish supper. And there was, when I lived in the Olsburg community, there was some people that were tended to be burrs under my saddle blanket. And when I got back there after 30 years, I discovered that those burrs were still there. And this one gentleman was informing me that when he retires, he's going to buy low and sell high. And he was implying that the marketing schools I was doing, I'm not very quick on my feet, so I didn't have a response to him, but I learned a lot from him, because unless you know the relationships of the market, you don't have a clue whether something is low or high. You've got to have a relationships to work on. And
yeah, because I think we've all probably talked about 2014 for a long time, and that was a market high, and then now we've kind of tickled those prices. We haven't gotten back to them yet, but we've gotten close now. But with the difference in what a dollar will buy now versus what it would have bought in 2014, that is one example of a relationship. We got to compare what does high really mean compared to those times, and then also again comparing those classes of cattle and saying what is it? Is it really high right now, or this is what the market is, and we can find a way to make money in this market, rather than saying it's too high or it's too low. But there's a way to make money in any market, whether the market's high or low. There's a way to make money. Would that line up with your experience?
That's very true. It just works out. One thing to bear in mind in a low market, you can handle a lot more volume of animals for the same. I'm talking about if you have a set amount of capital you're using, and high prices are not necessarily all that good. They just are, and you just have to utilize them and stuff.
Yeah. How do you handle the appreciation and then the depreciation of inventory value? What's your strategy in those kind of?
Well, one is I'm always looking at the relationships of the market, and when just like I said, today in Oklahoma, it is very, there's not enough money between the heifer calf and a bred cow to turn the heifer calf into a bred cow. So it's telling you, that you should be probably gathering up more bred cows, today. But one thing it's also telling you that still, there's enough depreciation going on that you cannot afford to make a younger cow into an old cow. It still eats up too much of your heifer or your calf price, and so you just need to be aware of that and stuff.
Yeah. Early on in this conversation, you mentioned dealing with today, and I think that is one of the things that we don't do very much of in the industry. In the cattle business, we don't do very much of dealing with today. We talk about 2014, and we look in the rearview mirror at what happened last year and what could have been better, and what could have what could have gone differently. But we don't do a lot of. And we worry about what will commodities cost us next year to feed these cattle that we do own, but we don't look at today. We don't deal with today. So talk to me about what you mean by dealing with today and why it's so important.
Well, to me, what do you have today to deal with? Because this is the only thing you can do. I know Bud always just drilled into me, that if I talked about doing something, he said, just start. Because until you start, you can't manage. And what I'm talking about dealing with today is you're managing what you can affect today. You can affect if you sell one class of animal and buy another because the class you want to buy is undervalued. You can take your feed costs, and work through, and whether you can afford to do it. A lot of people talk about you can't feed through a drought, and well, I question that. You've got to understand, what you're doing, but you can feed through a drought because I put cattle in a grow yard, and that's the same as feeding through a drought. And if you can make money, you do it. Now, granted, right now with the drought going on and the feed costs the way they are, it is very tough to do that, but you can still do it.
Yeah, and part of this dealing with today is also not necessarily looking forward, or not necessarily making a lot of your business plans and business decisions based on the futures market. Is that right?
The only time you can, like I tell people, the futures market is a real market. It is actually a real market going on today. But you've got to use it. If you're going to, just like right now, August feeder cattle are selling for $200. That is a tremendous amount of money. And if you own a set of calves or something, and you can hedge them at a very good profit, that's a decision you need to make, but you need to understand that you've got to use that market or it goes away. You cannot use it for budgeting reasons and stuff.
Right.
And
yep. What would be a way that you would use it as far as are you actually making trades in that futures market, or are you, how are you actually using it?
Well, here comes another story for you. In 2014, Wallace Olson, the master marketer, knew that feeder cattle couldn't go over 175. I knew they couldn't. So I hedged one load of cattle. I'm not much of a hedger. I'm a sell buyer, and I will sell one and buy one, and I don't worry about it. But I just knew they couldn't go over 175. So I hedged them, and $410 a head later in margin calls, because they went to $241. I figured it out that they could go higher, and like right now, if you're going to hedge them, if you've got 40% margin in some cattle, maybe you should think about hedging them. But if you do that, and if you got the capacity, you hedge them off and go get another load. One thing that I do is I will buy a load of cattle and sell them, hedge them, and then I'll buy another load of cattle. So I may have 10 loads of cattle around, but I'm only at risk of the market on one. And you just you need to understand what you're doing. And my deal is, if you want to manage your risk, you do a good job of sell by marketing, keep them game and keep them alive. And I don't need to do fences and puts and calls and all the above,
Yep. Yep. We've talked about kind of the paradigm in the cattle industry of looking ahead and looking back, and not necessarily looking at today and what's the market and where are the opportunities that are presented to me by this market. What are some of the other paradigms of the cattle industry that you see?
One of them, and we're going to talk about the cow business right now, because that's the one I'm really interested in. And one to me is cow longevity. Everybody is, and you've got to understand that to me, and if somebody would show me the numbers, there's people that talk about, a cow in profit. And the way I look at it, depreciation is just eating you up at that time. And a cow should be paid for every day. You got to decide whether you're going to sell her or keep her. But every day she should pay for herself. And whether it's a heifer calf going up in value, you aren't going to have cash flow there, but you will be building value, and you just need to decide and understand that. And then if you need to, sell her and do something else. So. And to me, if a cow has bred and had a calf, from being a heifer calf to first calf heifer to a 5-year-old cow, you know about as much about her on longevity as if she lasts till she's 10 or 11 or 12 years old.
Yeah, a lot of them that make it to that point are going to make it farther, but they're also going to, depending on, we can pick numbers, right? They're all, every number we pick is going to be wrong, but, just in today's market, I don't know what a bred 4 or 5-year-old's worth, but it's somewhere north of $2,000. And then her broken mouth sister is, worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,200 or maybe less, depending on, as a bred cow. And so she's lost $800 of inventory value in 4 years. And so that was $200 a year in depreciation that she has to cover, that and the price of her cow. That's kind of what you said. She needs to pay for herself, right? Or the price of her calf.
And then another thing is paradigms just is big calves. I mean, when you listen to, I have a problem with, I'm on Facebook and I love the spring, and everybody is moaning and groaning about, and the show's got pictures of their sleds and dragging calves to the barn, and that's what you want to do. Do that. I did that for years. I mean, because I just didn't think about it. I thought that's the only way it can do it, and understand the cost of the big calves. And big calves, you're selling them into the lowest time of the market. Whereas if you take a cow and calve her on green grass and just kind of bounce along with her and can carry her over to the spring or the grass fever market, it's a tremendous difference in your profitability. And another thing is if you calve later and you plan on selling your calves in the spring, or you can carry them to the fall for yearlings, that's in the same tax year. And that's very critical, because if you sell in the fall and then decide to carry your animal over and make a yearling out of her, you don't have any income one year, and you've got a huge amount of income if you sell both calf crops the next year. So you need to me, it's it makes life a lot easier calving later and not having all the costs and stuff.
Yeah, what do you mean by that, as far as holding those over? So we're talking about a calf born in May of 2022 and holding those over until the fall of 2023. Is that
or no? What I'm talking about is okay. Calves born, later this year. You leave them on the cows and longer. and then plan on marketing them in like March or April in this country, when grass fever is just sizzling. Or at that time, here's where you can use the futures market. You can look at the futures market, in March and see what they're willing to give you in August for a yearling, and you may want to just hedge that calf and turn it into a yearling and stuff.
I've had some people express interest in that business model, but they kind of struggled with not having a paycheck for a year that you had mentioned. would it be a strategy that where somebody could liquidate some of the cow herd to generate some cash flow and maybe take in some custom yearlings or something like that to make up the difference on the cows that they sold, as far as the amount of head running on the place, to kind of generate some cash flow to get by until they could sell those March or those May calves in the March of the next year, or hold them over to yearlings of that next year? Is that something, or are there other ways that you can think of as far as helping somebody get started on that, where the cash flow crunch kind of becomes an issue as far as not having that paycheck for a year?
One thing to start in this is you need to understand, if you're going to do all these changes, you need to understand where to change. And a lot of people say, well, I'm going to start selling 5-year-old cows, but I'm going to sell these old cows, and I'm going to go down to the 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 5-year-olds. You don't do that, because these older cows you have are already depreciated out. They are going to give you a full value calf. What you do is you drop back to your 5-year-old cows and you sell some of them, and then you just wear the older cows out. And so rather than, you could probably, by the higher value of the 5-year-old cows, you won't be in that big a cash flow crunch as you may think you are.
Right. Sure.
And stuff. One thing that's very interesting is on doing this marketing, and what's interesting to do is go through on take the animals that you sell a year. You understand what I'm saying? Your steer calves, heifer calves, open heifers, just open cows, cull cows, and you add them all up, and then you go over here on the accelerated side and go down through there, and you're selling 5-year-old cows instead of all the other. What's interesting is you can increase your value of the animal sold by about 50%. And I will give you an example. My brother-in-law changed over, and one side on his conventional, or how everyone else does it, his average value of an animal sold was $823. On the accelerated side, the average value was like $1,240. It was about a 44% increase in the value of animals sold. That makes up for a lot of cash flow problems people are worried about.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times we get into these ruts of thinking, there's a lot of people who are making money, and there's a lot of people against us in this market, but then there's also opportunities presented by that, and I think that selling those running age 5 and 6-year-old cows is one of those opportunities where maybe the cow calf business is a tough business to make money in, but there's opportunities presented by that where you could market some of those running age cows.
One of the, I would go down and spend weekends with Bud, and he always had an agenda that we were going to work on when I went down there. And, I was a stalker guy. I didn't have time to fiddle around with a cow. And one weekend I went down there and we had on how to make money with cows. And coming away from that on Sunday, I was a changed person, and it has worked out very well for me. Because one thing you got to understand, that if you sell a 5-year-old cow compared to a heifer calf, you do not have to pay self-employment tax on that money income. That's 15%. You got to decide whether you're going to manage your retirement or that you're going to have the government. I managed a ranch, so I get a very good Social Security check. It's very nice, but you've got to decide what you are going to do. If you're going to manage, and also it's taxed at a lower rate. And a lot of people say we don't need to worry about taxes. Well, I promise you, when you get profitable and you start paying, 30% tax or whatever, you quickly, change your mind. And stuff. So,
yeah,
you need to look at that.
Ross Bronson from Red Summit Advisors said a couple weeks ago on the podcast, he said, I'd rather be paying taxes than using an operating loan. And that was kind of an interesting way of looking at it to me, that if you get profitable and you've got the cash flow and you don't need the operating loan, you're going to have to pay taxes, but it's a good place to be.
Well, see, my philosophy is I always want to pay, since taxes are stair-stepped, I always want to pay step one of the stairs, and maybe some into step two. But when you get into step three and stuff, we're going to start looking at ways to mitigate that burden. And there is good ways to mitigate that burden. The problem is here's another paradigm. Whenever you start managing taxes, you do stupid things. Well, you can do very, I'm not talking about going out and buying a new pickup truck, and stuff like that. I'm talking about doing things that will be, very profitable to do, but still lower your tax burden.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So buying the new pickup truck to get out of paying taxes is an example of a stupid thing, is what you're saying, right?
In my humble opinion, but wants and needs, and I absolutely don't need a very pickup truck, So
right, right.
And another paradigm that I have is cows, the indigenous knowledge of the ranch. We got to keep these old cows around because they know how to go up the mountain and come down the mountain, and they know where the swamps are, and they know this and they know that. Well, my deal is if a heifer calf is born on the ranch, she gets bred and raises a calf or two on the ranch, she probably has, 90 or 99% of the indigenous knowledge of the ranch. So you do not need to keep these animals around forever because they aren't learning. In my humble opinion, they aren't learning that much more. But and like I said, if anybody wants to dispute me, call me up. I would love to discuss this. Right. I'm willing to change if you show me that I'm not quite right, and stuff.
You changed your mind a lot over the years, so you're not afraid to do that.
Like my wife says, when you are dealing with Wallace Olson, that you can set out in the morning to we're going to do this, and this, and when you come in at night, you didn't do one of those things. So it's just you got to, like I said, I am a I do not do very well at planning. I do very well at preparing, and so when here's today. This is what we've got to do. You just put the blocks in order, and away you go.
Right. Yeah, and that indigenous knowledge of the ranch, connects to cow longevity, and one of the things I was thinking about as far as you were talking about, rather than selling backwards to the 5-year-old cows, start with the 5-year-old cows, start selling them. And, those 8, 9, 10-year-old cows, they've kind of depreciated as much as they're going to depreciate. If they keep getting bred, their intrinsic value isn't going to change much going forward. They're going to kind of be worth, a little bit more than way up price for the rest of their lives. And so they can hang out and just keep on producing calves. And then you've got that. You're not losing that indigenous knowledge of the ranch necessarily. Like you said, they've got it all by that time, by the time they're 4 or 5 or whatever. And so you've got those opportunities presented by what you've raised.
And one thing I want to point out to people that say you're in the meat business, it does not bother me if you want to find your super old cows and you're in the meat business, since they don't, they hold their value, that's fine. But don't get ate up, because we just get ate up by depreciation, and people don't talk about it. Another thing that is we give up all of our appreciation in the cow herd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got them on the ground, we've kept them alive, we've developed them into a cow, and they've gained a lot of value in those 4 or 5 years, and now they're going to go the other way, and we're going to give up all of that value that we gained. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. And another thing that is to make ranch or the cattle or cow business easier is put lots of pressure on when you're breeding your heifers for the first time, and keep all, my deal is keep all your heifers. Let the bull decide which ones should be replacements. Don't put a lot of money in them, and you will. One of the things that just slays me is when they put in all these heifer development yards. I mean, they would put those heifers, they would feed the crap out of them. You would write horrendous checks every month to pay the feed bill. You'd bring them home to the ranch, calve them out, and the next fall, half of them would be open. Well, make them open when they're yearling heifers and beef feeder heifers that you don't have the money in them.
Right. Yep. If that yearling heifer comes up open, she's still, a lot of times, if you haven't put a lot into developing her, she's still a lot of times profitable to sell into that yearling market.
Yep. And the next thing that is
one more thing before you move on, I think something that we forget, or an opportunity that we miss a lot of times with these old cows, and that being in the meat business thing is about as people-y of a business as it gets, and we've said a lot of times, maybe too many times, that we didn't get into ranching because we liked dealing with people. But here's a way to turn those cows, those old cows, into something that can benefit you. Gabe Brown tells me there's $700 worth of nutrients in that cow's carcass if you will compost her and turn her into some kind of a compost tea or some kind of a fertilizer that you can spread out. Now, it doesn't work if you just leave her lay out there. You've got to actually put the effort into composting her, but there's a lot of nutrients available there if you'd take the time to make her into something after she's passed away. And so there's another opportunity, I think, for your old cows as far as an income stream is concerned.
And it's back to Bud, you got to know and understand yourself, and know what you will do and know what you won't do, and but don't sit around and whine about can't be profitable, because it can be profitable. And that's another paradigm that I truly believe that most agriculture has been so beaten down that we truly do not believe it's you can be profitable. And people can, on what I talked about on capturing your inventory value, I mean, you do not have to spend any money to do this. I mean, I'm not telling you to go scale a business and buy twice as many cows or anything. I'm just talking about manipulating and working with the numbers that your inventory is giving you and capitalize on them. And I have a gentleman that I work with that's in the sheep business, and he has started doing this, and he changed his income by about 75%. Well, matter of fact, it'd be more than that, because he changed it from just a second before I lie about this. He changed it from making $107,000 in sales in his sheep business to $407,000, and he did not change any numbers. He just marketed the animals when they were overvalued.
Wow, makes a big difference.
Now granted, he would go buy ewe lambs and develop them and sell breeding ewes, and most cattle people know the devil of the sale barn or whatever, and they're not willing to go buy and sell and buy. So I work on just manage your inventory.
Yep. What do I have today that the market wants more than I do?
And like in 2014, I sold most of my cows, and I kept the heifer calves and made them into bred heifers, and I walked that down, and then I retired in 2016, and by walking those cows down, in 2016, I sold the bred heifers for $1,600, and everybody thought, well, that's terrible. Yeah, but if you looked at the relationship, heifer calves had come down so much that a $1,600 bred heifer was still a very good trade.
Right. Yep. So you've got this webinar coming up. When and where and how do people sign up to get to hear about it and all those things?
You go to, just a second here, everybody. You go to ranching.fyi. And the links are there. This is going to be December the 13th of 2022. It's going to start at 2 p.m. and go till everybody is completely happy. And it costs $100 to be on it. And you can also, but anybody that is a member of ranching.fyi gets to be on it for free. So in other words, you can sign up for ranching.fyi and get a year's worth of ranching.fyi for free, or this conference for free, whichever.
However you want to look at it.
However you want to look at it.
Yep. And the things that you'll be covering in that
is basically what we have talked about today, and I will have stuff to show you how to use the cow bell curve to figure these things out. And it to me, it's very easy. You've got to get mentally prepared for it, because all the rest of it is just math. I mean, it's getting your mind prepared, for what you're going to do and things.
Yeah, getting your getting your mind prepared for a different way of approaching the cattle business. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Correct. You got to understand that, the four paradigm things that, I talked about. There is some very learned people that will just chastise me for what, when I talk about, but nobody, everybody talks about, a cow doesn't pay for herself till 8 years old. And I say, well, show me the numbers, because I've got a chart that I will show that by selling a 4-year-old cow with the excess cash you get for doing that, you can pay for her in like 2 or 3 years. If you take the 8-year-old cow and carry her out, it takes like 52 years to pay for her. So, I am more than willing to, just show me the numbers. I'm interested in learning. I have been wrong a lot in my life, and I'm, now being, like I said, eating crow, is kind of tough, but you got to learn to eat head first, because if you go the other way, the feathers catch, so, and I've ate a lot of crow in my life and plan on eating more,
Yep. Very good. Well, Wally, we will have a link up in the show notes page. Well, actually, no, I'll be on an elk hunt when this one comes out. So I will have a link in. I will make sure that there's a link posted where people can find that. But it's pretty simple. Go to ranching.fyi, sign up, and you'll get notifications for that webinar coming up December 13th. So very, very much appreciate your time today. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we sign off here?
Well, like I said, if anybody has any questions, send an email to me, and I will call you back. I will not email you back, but, because it takes some discussion. But send me your question. I'll gladly get back with you.
Yeah, and to that end, my parents are on here today and have been listening in, and for some bonus content, if you got a little time, Wally, I'm going to capture some of their questions for you and release that as some bonus content later on to the Patreon supporters. So if you got time for that.
I've got time.
All right. Well, Wally, thanks for your time today.
Well, thank you. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Since 1922, Mystic Lubricants has been providing superior performance and protection for farmers who demand the most out of their equipment. Today, Mystic continues to develop products in real-world conditions that are specially formulated to meet the unique demands of your specialized machines. They provide advanced protection for engine longevity and are the choice of people who make a living working the land. Learn more about Mystic products at mysticlubes.com. That's MYSTIK lubes.com.
As always, very good stuff there with Wally, and really appreciate his perspective and his willingness to be challenged, and he is very reachable and a wealth of information and knowledge, and would encourage you to take advantage of his invitation to reach out to him and get a hold of him. And one of the great ways to do that is Ranching.FYI, and get in on that webinar on December 13th and be there at 2:00 and be able to get your questions answered. Have the opportunity, like my parents did in the bonus content, to ask their questions and get their questions answered. And so take advantage of that opportunity and head over to Ranching.FYI to get signed up. Looking forward to next week on the Working Cows podcast. Going to be talking to Bud Williamson, be talking kind of more cattle marketing and some of those things. And the Williamsons place a lot of cattle. The Williamsons market a lot of cattle, and we're going to talk to them about, talk to Bud about how they've developed that market over the years and some of the things that they are doing, really, I think, to impact, to change the way cattle are marketed and give people opportunities on the selling side and on the buying side. And so really looking forward to that conversation coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.